Matthew Brenner here from Action Karate. I am with Andrea, and she is one of our awesome Action Karate families, and she's going to share with us how her young daughters were able to build confidence and discipline through training with Action Karate. So say hi, Andrea.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Brenner, for having me. Super excited to be here.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about your background and who you are, and just a little bit about yourself and your family.
Okay, so I'm Andrea Gronski, aka Miss Andrea, head instructor over at Action Karate Drexel Hill. So I was not always a head instructor, obviously. In fact, I was not always involved in the karate world. So super funny story, Mr. Brenner. I don't know if you actually know how I came about getting involved in the Action Karate world here. So my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's almost 17. When she was 8, this isn't a funny story. When she was 7, she was being bullied. She went to a private school, was being bullied mercilessly by this little girl. Like, it came to a head when this little girl pushed her down in gym class, threw her shoes across the gym, and I was down at the school screaming. And I'm a pretty emotional person, so no big surprise I went down to the school screaming, like Mama Bear came out. The school refused to do anything about it. So I went home super upset. My husband's a state trooper, and I was a family therapist. So family therapist working in the mental health field. I worked in the mental health field for 18 years. So, really tried my hardest to instill everything I ever learned in building the confidence and getting my daughter to be empowered. Just all the tools that I knew how to do. And I just saw her like really retreating and disappearing in herself. So I sat down with my husband and I said, okay, we need to do something. When I was 16, this is the story I told him. When I was 16, I worked at the Chamonix Mall in Bensalem. And I would see these little people walking around all the time wearing karate clothes. And I would think, who the heck are these people? Like, they're so funny, because I was 16. And sure enough, Action Karate jumped in my head, like, that's who those people were. Picked up the phone, called Miss Jackie, got my daughter in right away. We saw a very drastic improvement in my daughter. She loved it. She loved going. We saw the confidence build. She joined Black Belt Leadership. She then was asked to be on the demo team. Now she's one of my assistant instructors here, doing an absolutely amazing job. So just seeing that growth, that confidence, that empowerment, no one has ever pushed her around since then. She's been able to stand up for herself in all situations, use her voice with kids, with adults, everything we want for our kids when they start. So that's not where my journey began, however. That's her journey. My middle daughter, I'm sorry.
Can I get back to that for a moment?
Yes.
So she was getting bullied in school, and you tried to deal with it at the school. It became Mama Bear, and then you looked for something else to help her, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
And you recall when you were a teenager seeing people walk around, but what made you decide to even call like a karate school for that in order to help her with the bullying situation she was dealing with?
So as a family therapist, we were always looking for activities for the children within the families that I was seeing, to find a good outlet for them. And time again, karate just kept coming up. And we actually had used Action Karate in Feasterville for some of my clients way back when as well. So just for that discipline, that confidence, like giving them something. And my daughter was not much of a team player because she retreated so much. Internally, like, we tried soccer, we tried t-ball, and I'm like, I have to do something. Like, it was like urgent, red lights flashing, this is an emergency situation, I have to do something before it's too late. Like, you hear, unfortunately, these terrible stories about children being bullied, and I knew right then and there, I did not want that to be my child. I have to try martial arts for her.
So what exactly is it that Action Karate implemented that you feel like helped her feel empowered, or feel the confidence that you wanted for her?
So I think the fact that the instructors really took the time to get to know her, to get to know my family, to understand exactly what we needed as a family. They challenged her on the mats. They also went at her own speed. They met her where she was and then pushed her. So they helped her grow. They helped her find her own on the mats, and they really created that safe spot for her. There were times where she would be bullied, and I would call the head instructor and the enrollment director and say, hey, this is what's happening right now. And they're like, bring her in, let's talk to her. And they would, like, we would have a little powwow in one of their private offices to talk about, this is what's going on. This is how you stand up for yourself. This is your support network.
Okay, great. So it sounds like that personal connection and them just actually caring about what was going on is what helped her kind of get over or get past, or maybe not get over or past, but like deal with those challenges when they came.
Yes.
So
yes, absolutely.
How did that make you feel as a mom to see that? Like someone outside the school taking so much care in your daughter's life and not just, teaching them how to kick or punch. Like, that's great. Like everyone knows that for karate, but taking that extra step, how do you feel as a mom when you, and as a family therapist, when you see someone else willing to kind of do that sort of thing?
It is absolutely amazing when that village actually comes through for you. Like, wow, as a mom, I'm not in this alone. There are other grown-ups who understand, and there are other grown-ups that committed and who care that much about my child that they want to see her succeed, and they want to see as a family us to succeed and for us to reach my daughter's goals. So I can't tell you how many times I would call the head instructor and the enrollment director and be like, am I doing the right thing here? And they would talk me through it. So definitely that personal connection has been above and beyond amazing.
I think it's super cool to hear you say, even with your experience as a family therapist, asking like, am I doing the right thing? Right? I think any mom is going to any mom who is not a therapist or in any like mental health field would it's definitely common for them to feel that way. But even someone who has professional training, like, hey, like I still feel this way sometimes, right?
Yes.
I think that's super cool to share that, because I think some people might feel guilty about feeling that way, or maybe feel like they're the only ones, but you're not, obviously. So what about your other daughter? So that was for her, that was for confidence, right?
Yes.
So why did you get the other ones? And you have two others, right?
Yes. So when my oldest started, my youngest was very much into cheerleading, very much like cheerleading, dance, loved all of that stuff. So she would come with me during class, and my baby was still in the car carrier, so she's a whole other story. So we would come to class and she would watch and she would watch. And then she finally said, you know what? I want to do this too. So same thing. I flagged down the head instructor. Hey, this one's ready now. And we got her right on the mats. Now, being my middle child, she is, I don't want to say wild child, but she definitely wears a coat of a different color. Like, she's just her own person. She's probably the one who is most like me. So we probably butt heads the most. So I was looking, she was looking at it for an activity. I was looking at it like, you know what? I saw what this did for my oldest. She doesn't need the confidence because, she's amazing in that aspect. Big ego, but she does need the discipline. Like, I need her to do what's right. And I need her to be able to achieve her goals. So that's why we started with her. Now, when she started training, I started training. So that's where my story also started too. So that was pretty cool. That was her stipulation with me. Okay, mommy, if I do this, you're doing it too. So that's when I started.
Okay. So you just started mainly to accommodate her so she'll do it.
Yes.
Okay.
That was it, because let me tell you, I was like, I am busy. I'm a fan. At this point, I was a program director. I was no longer doing therapy. I was supervising 10 different therapists. So I was on call all the time. I worked for nonprofit. So we were dealing with the crisis center and the state, and I was super stressed all the time. So I told the head instructor, I'm like, I'm going to try it. And my husband was a state trooper, is a state trooper. So his hours were crazy. He was on the road. I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to do this now. My youngest is now a little bit older, so she's out of the car carrier, but I still have this small child at home. But we did it, and it was absolutely amazing that I had this activity with the girls where we would go home and we would practice, and wheel kicks would be thrown around my kitchen, and it was pretty amazing.
So how did that impact your relationship with you and your kids?
I think the biggest impact was they got to see what happens when things got hard. When we had challenges, when someone wanted to quit. I personally quit in my head 3 times, and I thought, I have to show these little girls, like, we don't quit when things get hard. We keep going. We overcome our roadblocks. We overcome our challenges. That having that shared activity and something else to talk about was just another layer that we were able to talk about, because when kids get to be teenagers, it's a little hard to find that common ground. Karate was always our common ground. So, just sharing that, doing a lot of those activities, those life skills. The story of the week was always a conversation that we would have during dinner. So.
Okay, great. That's really cool. So you went from your oldest daughter wanting to figure out how to deal with a bullying situation and confidence, right?
Yes.
And then your middle daughter, for her, maybe wanting some discipline for her, right? As you said, she's a little bit more like you, right? A little bit of a wild child,
Yes.
And her own individual. And then and then you just joined mainly because she wanted you to do it, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, and then eventually you got your youngest daughter involved too. So it became this whole family affair. And like you said, you talk about it at dinner. So what do you think would have happened if you never took action that first day, where you were like, you walk into the principal's office or at the school, you're upset, and that moment doesn't motivate you to call action karate. You never start your training. How do you think life might be different?
So it's so funny that you asked me that, because this is a conversation my husband and I just had about a month ago. I would still probably be in the mental health world that was sucking the life out of me. I was coming home every night and I would literally lay on the couch because I would just be mentally and emotionally exhausted. Working, people who work for the mental health system, there's not enough support for them out there. They deal with some horrific stories, and I would just come home and cry because we couldn't help these kids enough. So I would be there. My children, that's another thing. Like, they definitely would not be the little leaders and the little wonderful young women they're becoming without having that solid guidance and the ability to build all of those skills that we want so desperately for our children. My oldest is getting ready to start choosing colleges, and just watching that process, I do think, like, what if she didn't have the confidence to be able to do this? And like, what would her life be like? What would my middle life be like if she still was, she's still a wild child still, and we love her for pieces for that, but she's more disciplined. I don't have to worry about the schoolwork. She's getting her A's. So I don't know that I'd want to be in that life.
Okay. So, and I think the part we might have like sort of skimmed over is the part where you went from, hey, I'm a student on the mat, to, hey, now I'm a teacher, then eventually to you running a whole program. So
yes,
like, what made you decide to make that jump from mom taking their kids to karate to and working in the mental health field? So now you're teaching it professionally. So like, how has that been, and like what motivated you to finally do that?
So this is where my littlest story begins. Okay. She started at the age of 2. Now, mind you, she was like practically born in the school. So I started her Mommy and Me. She hated the head instructor, who I loved. Let's just make that very clear. Scared to death of him. Refused to step on the mats without me there. So I started obviously with Mommy and Me, and then Little Ninjas. Same thing. I was on the mats with her. The head instructor approached me one day and said, "Hey, Miss Andrea, you ever thought about doing this professionally?" And I laughed and I said, "No." So it took a couple tries, and I'm like, you know what? I actually do like this. I was finding myself leaving work and going right over to the school so I could help on the mats. And hey, when do you need me here? I loved it. Like the little ninja class. I mean, they're phenomenal. They're 3 to 6 year olds, and they are truly like they're little lights that walk through the door. So then at that point, I went through a certification and I became certified in that class. And then I certified in the adult class. And then I was approached about, hey, did you ever think about doing this full time? So I gave it a lot of thought. This was not a quick decision because mental health was the only thing I knew. I was in that field for 18 years at that point. And it was something like that was my comfort zone. And I did a lot of thinking, a lot of internal reflection. I loved going to the school. I loved going to Action Karate. That was the highlight of my week. Like how the impact that I was making on these little lives was so very different and more effective than the impact I seemed like I was making in the mental health world. Um, so it was about 6 to 8 months that I took to decide, yes, I want to come on as an enrollment director. So I did that for 2 years, and then we decided the next step was to come open up a school in this community, and we haven't looked back since.
That's super cool. Thank you for sharing that. So, what would you say to someone who maybe a mom like you and they're watching this and maybe their daughter could use a little boost in confidence or discipline, and they're just kind of on the fence about it? Like, what would you say to someone like
I mean, truthfully, just do it. I mean, that's you will never regret giving your children the extra skills that they need to succeed. And I've seen it in my own children. I have seen it in other people's children. I've probably have, oh my goodness, hundreds and hundreds of students that I've seen go through our programs, and the success stories at the end. Like, just as moms, we want to give our children the best, but we just don't want to hand things to them either, if that makes sense. So this truly helps them develop those skills to deal with the tough things in life, because we do hard things. That's exactly what we do. And it just, the amount of growth I've seen, like, just do it. Like, there's nothing to lose here. They're only going to grow and soar.
that? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it can inspire a lot of people, and I appreciate you being here and doing what you do. So, Asa.
Thank you, Asa, sir. Thank you so